It is my pleasure to once again welcome to the show economist Dr. Walter Williams. Walter, thank you so much for taking the time. I appreciate it.
Good afternoon, Larry.
Walter, I don't know where to start. We haven't talked in such a long time. I want to start with Donald Trump. I see, Walter, some good, some bad, some ugly. The good is that he's focused the illegal immigration centerfold, and we're no longer going to be talking about sanctuary cities and catch and relief the way we were in the past. I think that's good. The ugly, Walter, is maybe he said that he doesn't mind paying higher taxes even though he's very, very wealthy, as if some people should be paying more taxes as opposed to the fact that everybody's overtaxed. And I guess ugly is when he said that he thinks that a few years ago single payer would have worked here in the United States. It, quote, works well in England. It works really well in Scotland, close quote. So I wanted to know what you thought of Donald Trump.
Well, I haven't been paying him that much attention, but I think that as you say, he did raise some very, very important issues, particularly the issues on immigration and border security. The things that he's saying about single-payer medical system, it hasn't really worked for the patients anywhere it's been tried, including Canada.
Right.
Matter of fact, Canadians, sometimes they're begging us not to go to the single-payer system because they say, well, where will the Canadians go for health care?
Well, Walter, I hear the Canadian healthcare system works great as long as you don't get sick.
that is absolutely right. And so I think that well, right now I would guess that he would not have a chance of even getting to winning many of the primaries. Right now he's ahead, but it's a while before the primaries.
Is there a candidate that you like, or one that offends you less than maybe the others?
Well, I think that I think that I would like to see a candidate who has some executive experience, and so that means a candidate that has a history of being a governor, either Walker or Bush or the fellow from Christie from New Jersey,
Rick Perry from Texas.
And matter of fact, the good presidents of the past, they have had a history of being a governor. Surely, Governor Reagan and the first George Bush and the second George Bush.
My guest is Dr. Walter Williams, also a very popular syndicated column. He's in about 200 newspapers or so. Walter, Obama has another year and a half or so to go. When he is done, the historians will say what about his tenure as president?
Well, in 2008 when he was running, I wrote a column about it. I predicted that he would be a failed president, very much like Jimmy Carter, but many people are suggesting that he's making Jimmy Carter look good.
Right.
And so I think that it's. And matter of fact, in that column, I said that the question was whether black people could afford Obama, because I pointed out in 1946 when Jackie Robinson was entering baseball as the first black in the professional leagues. At that time, black people could not afford to have a stumble bum in baseball. That is, the very first baseball player had to be very, very good. And as a result of Jackie Robinson being very, very good, it opened the floodgates for other black baseball players. And I said the same thing with the first black president. The first black president should be very, very good. But it turns out that Obama has been a disappointment, at least for those of us who believe in the United States Constitution and rule of law.
Walter, I looked at exit polling after 2008, and 65% of black voters cited the economy as their primary reason for voting for him, not race pride or anything like that, but the economy. The second highest reason was the Iraq War at just 10%. Of the non-black Obama supporters, 63% cited the economy. So blacks cited the economy at an even greater rate than non-blacks did who voted for Obama. And I'm looking at the black economy, And black net worth is down about 25% or so from when Obama took over. The so-called wealth gap between blacks and whites hasn't been this wide in 25 years. The labor force participation rate hasn't been this low since 1977. And for black men, it's as low as they've ever recorded it. Black income is down. The percentage of blacks who own their own homes are down. Equity is down.
And as well, black teenage unemployment is very, very high.
Right, and when we come back, I want you to explain to me why he still remains so popular with blacks. I don't think 95% anymore, but it's still pretty stratospheric. Don't leave town. Professor Walter Williams is my guest. We're going to talk about this and talk about minimum wage and anything else Walter has on his mind. So please don't leave town. The number is 818-353-1276. Dr. Walter Williams is a professor of economics at George Mason University, former chairman of that department, written a number of books, including but not limited to Race and Economics, How Much Can Be Blamed on Discrimination, The State Against Blacks, All It Takes Is Guts, South Africa's War Against Capitalism, Liberty versus Tyranny of Socialism. Walter, from your answer to my question about Donald Trump, my assumption is that you think he's going to fade pretty quickly, and as a result, you haven't put a whole lot of attention into watching him.
Well, that's right. Now, and actually, I haven't put a lot of attention into watching any of them.
Ben Carson, what are your thoughts?
I think that he's a brilliant man, a wonderful, excellent pediatric neurosurgeon. And but my impression right now, and I could be absolutely wrong, he does not have the instinct for the jugular vein. He's just too nice a guy.
Yeah.
And in politics, you can't be nice.
Rick Perry.
Well, Rick Perry, I don't know. I at one time I thought he was very, very good, but I don't know. He can't defend himself very well.
Mm-hmm. Walter, you have written columns. You've written a book about the minimum wage. Overwhelming majority of economists believe that artificially increasing the price of labor is going to decrease the demand for labor. Yet you guys, meaning economists, still haven't been able to win that argument. I'm in Los Angeles. And our mayor attended the London School of Economics, although he studied ethnic studies when he was there. We've just now raised the minimum wage in L.A. County to $15 an hour. And never mind that they had a meeting with a bunch of restaurateurs, all of whom told the mayor that this is going to hurt our profit and loss. It's going to cause us to cut hours, raise prices, slash maybe defer hiring choices. And he then said, well, we think you can absorb the increase, close quote. Why is it we can't win this argument?
Well, I think that the minimum wage sounds just. It sounds so godlike, and so many people and many Americans are good-hearted people, and they want to help their fellow man in need, and so they're thinking with their heart instead of their brain, and they're not asking. See, I think that if you ask what is the effect of the minimum wage law, you put yourself in the place of an employer, and you must pay $15 an hour to no matter whom you hire, mm-hmm. or whatever the minimum is. And so you have to ask the question, will you pay a person $15 an hour who can only add $5 or $6 or $7 dollars of value to your output per hour? Mm-hmm. And most employers will see that as a losing economic proposition. So the initial effect of the minimum wage law is to discriminate against the employment of low-skilled people. Mm-hmm. And if you look at the labor force in our country, the low-skilled people are, for the most part, teenagers. They lack the maturity and the experience of adults. And among the teenagers, there are black teenagers that not only share the handicaps of teenagers in general, but they receive a fraudulent education by the public school system. And so if you say, well, who's going to bear the greatest burden of the minimum wage law? It would be black teenagers, then teenagers in general, and low-skilled people in general. But, however, I think one of the things that you have to recognize, if you say, well, why is it that unions and others support the minimum wage law? Well, what the minimum wage law does for unions, it eliminates some of the competition that they face with low-skilled workers. Mm-hmm. That is, many times you could do many projects hiring 2 or 3 low-skilled laborers, instead of one higher-skilled labor. But if you raise the minimum wage law, you'll cancel that option. Then also something else. There's a super minimum wage law called the Davis-Bacon Act, and politicians, black politicians, support the Davis-Bacon Act. And anyone listening can go to page 6531 of the Congressional Record in March 31st, 1931, I believe, and you'll see that contractors from the North, they were complaining about contractors from the South coming up with black labor and underbidding the white laborers. And so that's why they said we need a super minimum wage law in the construction industry to protect white workers from having to compete with low-skilled black workers. Now, while the rhetoric in support of the Davis-Bacon Act is different today, the effects are the same. Davis-Bacon Act is still in the books. Black politicians and other liberal Democrats and also Republicans support it, and it still has the effect of handicapping black construction workers.
My guest is Dr. Walter Williams, economist from George Mason University. Walter, you have written extensively, and I've quoted you, where you talk about the fact that before the minimum wage really went into effect, the first one was 1938, but the first one was really kind of below what people were paying in those days, so it really had no effect. But when they kept raising it, it went from black teenagers being more likely than white teenagers to be employed to black teenagers being far less likely than white teenagers to be employed.
That is absolutely right. As a matter of fact, in my book, Race and Economics, I point this out with the Department of Labor Department statistics, and it was in 1948, the unemployment rate among black teenagers was 9.4%. The unemployment rate among white teenagers was 10.4%, and black teenagers in 1948, they had a labor force participation rate that was greater than white teenagers. Now, the black teenage unemployment, as a matter of fact, white teenage unemployment has not been that low since. Mm-hmm. And so, how do you explain the low teenage unemployment back in 1948 for black students? Well, it wasn't because there was less racial discrimination. It wasn't because blacks had greater skills than whites in 1948. No, it was the minimum wage. And so raising the minimum wage just priced these youngsters out of the market. Mm-hmm. And I just might want to point out something, that the little bit of money that a kid could earn in an after-school or weekend or summer job is not nearly as important as the other things that he learns from early work experience, such as, well, you got to come to work Friday, even though you got paid Thursday.
Right.
You have to dress in a certain demeanor. You have to obey the supervisor, and many times kids, particularly black kids, the only way they're going to learn these things that will make them more valuable employees in the future is to learn it through on-the-job training, because they're not going to learn it at home, not in the schools, and not in the neighborhoods.
My guest is Professor Walter Williams. Professor, when we come back, I want to talk to you about what progressive policies have done to the families in America, especially minority families, so please don't go away. Dr. Walter Williams is my guest, 818-353-1276, 818-353-1276. My last few minutes with Dr. Walter Williams. By the way, he's subject of a documentary called Suffer No Fools, and there are a number of places where you can see it. SufferNoFoolsFilm.com. It's also on YouTube. It's also on Vimeo, and again, it's called Suffer No Fools. Walter, you've written extensively about the black family and what progressive policies have done, and you said that based on census reports back in, say, the 1890s, a black kid was slightly more likely to be born to a mother and a father under one roof than a white kid.
Oh, yes. And matter of fact, up until 1950, it was only, in 1950, only 18% of black kids lived in female-headed households. In 1938, the illegitimacy rate among blacks was 11%, and now today it's close to 75%. And so when people talk about the legacy of slavery as an excuse for what we see today, or as the cause of what we see today, I mean, that's just ludicrous, because when blacks were far closer to slavery, the family was much stronger, and we did not have the huge illegitimacy and the various kinds of social pathology that we see. And in addition, that like in the 50s and 60s or 40s or earlier, blacks who graduated from high school could do almost as well as whites who graduated from high school today. A black high school graduate average, he can read and write and compute as well as a white seventh grader. And these numbers are available through the National Assessment of Educational Progress statistics put out by the National Center for Education Statistics.
Walter, you are a vet. You served in the Army. You have thoughts on this Iran deal, thoughts on how we should deal with ISIS?
Well, I think we should be mean. I think we should. I think that what Obama has done, he's virtually promised Iran a roadmap to nuclear weapons, and if they get nuclear weapons, we're going to be in a lot of trouble, particularly in the Middle East. Mm-hmm. And so I think we ought to use our military power and just tell Iran, look, when we discover that you're building nuclear equipment, we're going to bomb the facilities. And I think that with the ISIS people, we have to just be tough. We need to put soldiers on the ground to fight these people. They're evil people.
Why has Obama gotten a pass for pulling all the troops out of Iraq as he did in December 2011 after pronouncing Iraq safe, sovereign, and self-reliant? Instead, Obama still says that the people that are opposing this Iran deal are the same people that supported the Iraq war, as if he bears no responsibility for what's happened.
Well, that's the art of politics, is to put the blame on somebody else and avoid it yourself. and he's done very well, and he gets a lot of help with it.
Professor, as always, thank you very much for taking the time. I really appreciate it.
And thank you.
My pleasure. The brilliant Dr. Walter Williams, he's syndicated in about 200 newspapers. You can go on Amazon.com and see his list of books. And also former chair of the George Mason Economics Department, the same department where Professor Tim Grosclose works, whom we've interviewed a few weeks ago.